let's go all the way tonight. No regrets,
just love, just love.
we can
Dance until we die.
When you look at me, now baby, I believe
This is real. Don't ever look. I'ma get your heart racing in my skin tight jeans. Be a teenage dream tonight. Hands on me, my skin tight jeans. Be a teenage dream tonight. Oh, say. Ooh, ooh. I forgot.
We should listen to stuff and like critique it. Like
Listen to like this.
instead of looking at the arrangements, like how Mouth Off used to like critique. the
Oh
arrangements
yeah,
and stuff.
true.
That'd be fun.
Don't ever look back. Don't ever look back. Yeah. Just one touch. Now, baby, I believe it's real. Oh, whoa, that was in the mix. That was a little. And my skin tight. Dude, this is such a good song. This is one of my favorite songs. Hands on me in my skin tight jeans. Be your teenage dream tonight.
All right.
Okay, welcome.
That was Teenage Dream by the Warblers by Glee
By Ed.
Boyer, who arranged and recorded and produced that. And he is the man.
And he's also our guest for today, and we will have him on shortly after we do a bunch of really fun things with you guys. And yeah, welcome to Arranging and Chill again. Thanks for being here.
Arranging and Chill volume. Is this 4 now?
Is this our fourth one?
We did 2,
We
and
did
then
one,
we did
and
Eric.
then we did
and
Eric,
this is
and then-
4.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh my god.
Week 4.
And we're doing a bunch more because guys, we have so many things planned, like new activities that we're gonna do,
fun guests.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome.
Going
So
to be great.
let's just go right into it. Should we record this session?
It's already recording. I wanted to
Fantastic.
record our dance moves.
Oh, important, very important content.
Okay, so we have a fun. Let's do announcements first.
Yes, announcements. Oh, this is like school. I love it. Okay, so we have several announcements for today. The first
There are 2.
announcement. Several. We have 7.
Okay, do you want to do the first one?
Sure. I'm just going to do the one that's on the top of mind. The first one is the Varsity Vocals Collective is a project that Ben and I are working on in collaboration with Varsity Vocals to support the Music Cares COVID-19 Relief Fund. And so we're
Which
working...
gives grants to musicians
Right.
Who don't have work at this time.
Correct. Yeah. And we're putting together a virtual choir performance of The Bones by Maren Morris, a great song. And so if you were ever involved with varsity vocals tournaments like the ICCA, the ICHSA, the Open.
Or the NCCA from back in the day.
Yeah.
Which one of my vocal alums reminded me of.
Oh, shoot.
That was like 1996, the National Championship of Collegiate Acapella before it went international.
Yeah, before Canada swooped in. And the
England.
UK. Yeah. Crazy. So, if you were involved in any of those tournaments, you are eligible to submit for this. And if you weren't, involved with those tournaments, it's like just, I don't know, like DM Amanda Newman.
No, do not DM Amanda
She's gonna
Newman.
kill me for saying that.
There'll be other opportunities.
No, there will be other
Yeah.
opportunities
Things for
to
sure.
do stuff. But yeah, really do it because it's going to be awesome. And it would be nice to see a lot of people from this Arranging and Chill group because I imagine many of you guys have been involved in these competitive landscape. So yeah, there's the first
Cool.
announcement. Submissions are due by April 24th, which I believe is next Friday.
It's coming up.
So
soon.
yeah, it's due April 24th, next Friday.
Also, April 24th will be the due date for another thing we're going to announce.
What is it? Oh yeah.
So we are going to do a cool thing at the suggestion of someone on the Facebook page. We're calling it the Design Challenge. And what we're doing is we're giving one song to everyone who wants to participate. It's kind of a different way to do arrangement critiques, but everyone is kind of on the same page. And basically, we're giving you a song, which is what is it called? Wheels on the Bus, the nursery rhyme.
The Wheels on the Bus.
You know the one.
You know it.
And so everyone is going to interpolate and interpret and arrange that song however you want, for any ensemble, for any style of music, for anything. And we're going to look at them and see all the different versions people came up with and compare and contrast and, you know, see what works, what doesn't work, and all the different variety of styles that we have.
Yeah, we wanted to choose a song that wasn't like, you know, didn't have like it wasn't like a pop song on the radio, because I feel like there are certain kind of specific directions you could go in with that, and it's a little limiting. So we wanted you guys to create something out of, you know, a piece that's just very open in general, so you can just do whatever you like. So
yeah, people are asking about format. So ideally, if you really want to go to town with it, if you have sheet music and a sung demo, that would be fantastic. And like, if you do that, you'll be more likely to be chosen. And if you can't do a demo, no worries. Just do like sheet music and like an XML or Finale file or Note Flight or MuseScore link would be great. So any and all that you want to do, you are free to do it, though we will put preference towards demos if you can do that.
Yeah,
because it's more fun.
And we'll definitely more fun.
We'll be able to really hear what it sounds like and really like get a sense of it. And also it'll help with all the percussive elements, I think, too, because I think that's a really big key element as far as distinguishing different styles. And we'll talk about that. Hopefully we can get some good, fun examples of like different things.
Yeah, I think it'll be super fun. And yeah, so that's Wheels on the Bus. That's the Design Challenge. It can be a really short segment. We're not looking for anything. I don't know how many verses there are. Probably just one. But the wheels on the bus go round and round, round and round, round, and round, all through the town.
All through the town. Yeah. So just keep it simple. Unless you really want to like do a choral breakdown.
I'm excited.
And, like motifs and you know, theme and variations.
I feel like the possibilities are endless. I also, when we first thought about doing this, I was like, oh yeah, we're gonna get like 5 to 10 submissions, but like, I don't know, maybe everyone's going to want to do this. So let's see. I'm excited to hear all of your guys' different renditions on this. Again, be intentional and super excited to hear what you guys come up with. Again, the due date for that also is April 24th.
April 24th in the email arrangingandchill@gmail.com. It's a busy recording week for everyone between those two projects. So hopefully, I'm excited to see what we get.
Super pumped.
Cool. That's announcements.
Those are announcements.
Charles Cornell, 5 levels of Wheels on the Bus. Yes, please.
Yes.
That would be amazing. John Cage. See, you guys have great ideas. This is awesome.
Yeah, this is already going to be great. I think it's going to be really fun.
Wheels on the Bus
fugue. Our
maybe Wheels on the Bus in the style of Wolfpack, in the style of different artists could be fun.
That'd be really fun. You could do a Wheels on the Bus
reggae version. We could do a gospel version. You could do
Wheels on the Bus, evolution of Wheels on the Bus.
Evolution of Wheels on the Bus. You could do like an EDM version. You could do. There's so many.
There's so much. Okay, don't give it all away because we want them to figure it out. Okay, pumped for that. That's gonna be great. But definitely do the evolution of Wheels on the Bus.
Yeah, and okay, so that's announcements.
Okay, cool.
And our schedule for today, we're gonna do some question/discussion. I posted about just like different topics you guys want to hear us talk about, so we're gonna go through some of those. Then we're going to do critiques.
So we picked another 3 arrangements to look at from the ones which you guys sent to us. So we're going to be looking at 3 of those, and then we are going to...
Then we're talking to Ed.
Yeah.
He will be here.
Who's so fun.
Very excited.
Okay, cool. Talking to Ed and you at the same time is just going to be like basically what I do every day. It's going to be like my email inbox.
I know. We're just like doing emails, but in person.
Yeah, I love it.
Cool. We work with Ed basically almost every day. He mixes everything that we...
I feel like Ed is always on my phone. Like his name, Ed Boyer, is always on my phone screen.
Yeah.
Like no matter where I am.
Yeah, pretty much.
Amazing.
Okay. Do you want to go first?
Yes. Okay, cool. So we have a bunch of questions from you guys. We had a bunch of questions from Isaiah.
We don't have to go in
Carter.
order. You can do whatever.
Yeah, so I'm going to do whatever, and I'm going to do the first one, which is a question from Isaiah. Is that basically how to achieve a good balance / how to know what, if any, substitutions work in a given setting on the parameters of the song / desired emotions. I don't know. You answer this question.
Okay, so this is about harmony. This is about when to know if a substitution works, reharming, and then also there's a follow-up to that was asking about reharming outside of the jazz idiom, which is a great question. And yeah, I mean, basically how I have reharmed is I played piano for a lot of years, and I'm the more comfortable you can get, just like playing around, playing all the chords, and then you can just like experiment. And it's like the most annoying answer to a question. It's like, just do it, figure it out, like try a bunch of things.
How do I do this?
Well,
you just do it.
That's really how it is. But stuff I like, and okay, when you're talking about jazz, there's like stuff you can actually learn. You can go on YouTube and you can learn jazz harmony, and you can really get more informed about how functional harmony works with your arrangements, and how you can get 2-5-5 this substitution, and all these other cool ways to create color with your chords. And then when it comes to outside of the jazz idiom, I would consider that like clustery harmony, like pop harmony that has extensions in it, or suspensions. That's a nice favorite of mine with the 3 and the 4.
Yeah, I like that. I like just like syncopated droning on 1, 2, 5.
Oh, this is a good example. So Katy Perry, Teenage Dream, we were just listening to. A lot of pop songs like this, they have this drone that you're talking about, like a 1 and a 5 drone as the chords are moving, and that's something that is, I think, underutilized in a cappella arranging.
Not by me.
Not by you. But for instance, so it's like,
it just makes me feel so young and fresh.
It's classic. It's so good. It's so good.
I'm actually emotional about it.
I know, it's an emotional thing. These drones that create these other colors while the chords are moving.
Yeah, it's so good. And it's so simple. Oh yeah.
Well, I mean that's created because the E flat and the B flat are droning, and then the D is in the chord.
So you get this beautiful rubbing.
Yeah. So that's a really great way to do harmony extended harmony and substitutions and stuff like that outside of the jazz idiom. It's more of a color note than a substitution or a reharm, but it is a way you can create that where it doesn't exist in the song, which would kind of be a reharm.
And just to answer a quick question that somebody had, what is a drone? We refer to something that is just happening, like a single note or a single motif that's just happening over and over again, as a drone. So it could be just a line that is sung sustained, or it could be like a rhythmic.
A didgeridoo is a drone. A bagpipe has a drone. It's just like a common note that doesn't move, and then you do stuff around it.
Yeah. Okay, so a question by Yang Chen is how we broke into producing. Would love to hear a story about Citizen Queen and Acapop Kids and how they were put together and how they're so successful. Thank you, Yang Chen.
That also is kind of similar to this other. Let's like do that at the same time. I think it was a Cassie question.
Non-arranging,
producing.
No.
I think. It was this one, music and business. I think we can kind of combine.
Yeah. So
hierarchy structures, different parts of the industry, basically how to like be a player in the industry. Is what this is getting at.
I think there are a lot of ways though. Like, I mean, I think if you want to talk about like say Citizen Queen, and first of all, Citizen Queen and Acapop Kids are two different journeys for those things, but I guess for Citizen Queen, we can speak to that a little bit. It's like we had auditions for like people. We put together the group essentially, and then once we did that, we on our own started like producing them because we had the skills to do that. Like we arranged the music. We had friends and like colleagues who knew how to do like video recording and all sorts of stuff. So we were very scrappy in the beginning. And we used our own money to like basically create that stuff. So all those early music videos, I think, what were they, like Evolution of Girl Groups, Never Enough.
Yeah, I mean, that was basically investments done on the part of Sham, Scott, and I, and also Jonathan for Akapop.
Correct.
So yeah, and it was also it's not necessarily just like how we did it, but like how, because we created these projects, so it's a little different than us like being hired by someone.
Right. Oh,
something.
Totally. So this is like,
it's kind of
like
like
entrepreneurship,
right? It's entrepreneurship. So it's kind of a unique example. But yeah, if you're trying to create something from scratch, and
which I think they might be actually,
and have full control over it. And yeah, it's just about like laying out the steps and
also knowing like the right people. So I think it's like partially creating like a very intentional idea of like what you want it to be. So at Citizen Queen, we're like, this is a girl group that will look and feel like a girl group, and will.
Originally, we didn't know what it was going to be.
That's true.
So we put auditions out for singers who could dance. I just was like, I saw Soca Vocals performing in 2017, 16?
It was the one with Finesse.
18?
It was
16? I don't know. Who knows what year it is?
18.
Anyway.
Thank you, Tahila. It was 18.
18, right. It was 18. And they were dancing. It was great. I was like, there should be a professional group that can really dance and provide this kind of entertainment value.
In a different way from Pentatonix.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So
basically we had like guys and girls. We had
everybody. The call out. Everyone auditioned. And then based on what we got back, we're like, this needs to be a girl group. Like this is just like itching to be that. There isn't one in the mainstream. Like Fifth Harmony had broken up, and there was an opportunity.
Yeah.
And
also I feel like we really miss girl groups. I remember having a conversation with Scott. We were like, back in the day, there were like so many fun girl groups and like within different genres of pop and R&B, and we just like loved the nostalgia factor of that. So we thought it would be really fun when we did the Evolution of Girl Groups video. For example, we like obviously tried to touch on all the eras and stuff like that, and even in styling them, we wanted to make them look like they were all kind of wearing the same outfit, a la how Destiny's Child would like style their people. But in general, yeah, we started out those first like 6 videos or something, just by putting the money up front. I think there's a bit of personal investment that has to go in it, whether you're spending, a few $100s or several $1,000s. It doesn't really matter. You just need to like put some skin in the game with the right people. And then you also have to, in order to parlay that into something that's bigger, if you want to work with major labels, I think it's really important to know people who are influential.
And who are also business savvy too. Like we partner with Jonathan Calter, who is Pentatonix's manager, and he's a partner in Akapop, and he's Citizen Queen's manager. So he's the guy that really is looking at contracts and making sure we're getting good deals on everything. And he's, looking for
new opportunities,
working with labels. So it's important to have someone like that, whether it be at that level or just someone who is down to just look for opportunities and like go and maybe has a different skill set than you might.
Right.
As far as getting projects started.
Definitely. I mean, I imagine a lot of you guys have the arranging and musical skill set, but maybe you need somebody who's going to be really looking to like kind of make new connections and network to really bring your project to the next level.
Yeah, cool.
So yeah.
I like this question from Isaiah. One of 20 questions from Isaiah about creating a sound. Both you and Shams have helped shape the styles and specific sonic identity of high-performing groups. Would love to see what your process is and your take on it. And then the other one's the second question. This is a great question. And I think so much of a group's sound just comes from listening to the members and not trying to impose a particular sound upon them, but like really letting the ideas and the vibe and the inspiration come from them as vocalists. In general, the way that I operate, I don't have a lot of this like, I'm inspired by other people. I don't come forth with like, I want to do this and this and this and this and this. I listen, and I let Pentatonix as singers, the individual members, like their vocal identity, like seep into my brain. And then I'm like, how can I make this the best that it can be? So taking something that's already great, putting it together and making it even better.
Yeah. I think overall, I think it's a two-way street also. Like as time goes on, you're working with the same singers for a long time. Their musical identity and style really does rub off on you. And then you take what you like from what they've done to create your own musical identity. I know that like when I was arranging, like, when I was in college, I was arranging for the Nor'easters, and that was really the kind of foundational years of building that group's sound. It was really based on a lot of music that I just like to listen to in general. So I was really inspired by some of the different types of world music I was listening to, some of the different types of Linkin Park music I was listening to,
The different types of
the different types of Imogen Heap music I was listening to. And so it really came down to just me, and I think we all do this in a sense, is just kind of listening to music and picking the stuff you like the most and then just like stealing it and then retranslating it in your own flavor. And then, you know, as time has gone on, I started working in the professional scene. I would say, yeah, I'm wholly inspired by the singers that we have, and what they can do. I also am inspired by like what I like to sing. I think in general, I feel like I'm very like, these days I'm like a very R&B pop lean because I just like singing that way. So.
I think when it comes to song choice too, it's like a lot about what resonates with you as an arranger. And there are some times when I'm asked to arrange a song and I'm like, I'm not really feeling this song. Like I can do it. I'll do an okay job.
Yeah.
But I'm not excited about this song. And so therefore I'm not gonna present the best work.
And I feel like we're very upfront about that these days, like especially when we're picking music for like, say, Acapop or Citizen Queen or PTX. It's like, you know, if you're not like feeling it, then maybe.
Yeah, someone says, oh, like the song's really popular, it'd be great to do the song. And you're like, oh, okay, but like musically,
it's like
is it really gonna be the best it can be? Or should we pick something we're really passionate about and know that we're gonna knock out of the park arrangement wise and vocally and everything?
I think how this can also parlay to a lot of your guys' situations is that when you're music directing, like say your college or your high school a cappella group, a lot of times you'll have like a song selection process or like a pitching process. I know we both had those like in our groups. It's really important for you guys to like hear, for you guys as arrangers to like really advocate for like an arranger's perspective of like, you know, is this really gonna work a cappella, or am I really interested in arranging this? Because I feel like oftentimes if you're not interested in arranging it, you're not gonna do as good of a job. So it's really important to like kind of like be a little bit more of an advocate for yourself as an arranger. I know that in the earlier days for me in collegiate acapella, it was hard for me to like know when I should step in and say like, no, I really don't think, I'm not feeling it. So, you know, take that ownership.
100%.
Cool. Anything?
People are asking a lot about bass lines. I think bass lines would be a great thing to show. What?
Ed?
What about it?
No. Does Ed want to talk about bass lines?
Oh, maybe.
That was a question for Ed too.
Oh, yeah. But I think next week I'm going to prepare some stuff. And we're going to both prepare some more stuff from our arrangements. And we'll dive into that next week. But I would definitely want to get into bass lines and how to adapt bass lines from taking like a pop bass line and making it, if it's like really hard, making it vocally friendly and all that stuff. Strategies for writing for different group sizes. I think this is also like when it's one on a part versus
it's
not one on a part.
I mean, I think that when it comes down to it, if you're writing for lots and lots of parts, I think the main thing that comes to mind when I'm doing this is that you have to make sure the parts are singable by a wide variety of people. I mean, unless you're working with like some top
Wait,
level
do you mean
players.
Lots of people on a part or lots of divisi or both?
It could be both, but I'm saying lots of people per part, you know, primarily. So you want to make sure that your lines are universally singable. You know, right now we're putting together a lot of virtual choirs, so we need to make sure that, and maybe some of you guys are putting together virtual choirs too, but you have to make sure that the parts are universally singable enough so that, you know, it's not going to be this like very intricate like riff or something like that not a lot of people can do. So really taking a look at who you have, understanding the number of parts, that's probably one of the biggest things that you should do. Yeah.
And I think just my approach when it comes to arranging for a large group versus a small group is really different in that a lot of the interest in a large group arrangement comes from how I use the different layers to create a cool musical sound, as far as like different things happening. And I don't know how to really explain this, but let me go the other way. So for small group arrangements, it's really about the performances. When you're talking about pentatonics, when there are two background parts, the background parts have to be interesting and well performed and and it's all about how they sing it, really. And
less about how like clever,
less
like,
about how clever the arrangement is necessarily, and more just like, are they going to sound cool singing this? Is this going to be interesting to listen to two people sing these parts?
like, are you setting them up as an arranger? Are you setting them up for success, given that they're such a small number? On the large group end of the spectrum, I think that you're kind of creating more atmosphere, and more energy with
more texture.
Yeah,
you can have more just like straight up pads with some background harmonies over it, and some cool bell tones and cool stuff like that that's like very arrangementy. And whereas with small groups, it's more just about the vibe, and also what they can do specifically as specific singers.
Yeah, and there's so many pros and cons of arranging for large groups and small groups. We just finished a large group arrangement. We also just finished a small group arrangement. And like, I feel like we get different things out of it. As an arranger, you can really get so much, arrangement-y is a word.
It is. It's a very different process. And the different state of mind thinking about that. And then, just what Sean was just saying, when you have a lot of people on one part, just universally singable stuff that is still fun.
I like to also think of like characters in large group arranging. Like when you have large group arranging, you just have so many people that you have to like kind of identify like who they are in like the language of the arrangement. And so what I mean by that is like, okay, say you have like a soloist, two harmony lines, and then you have like a trio number 1 and trio number 2. I feel like I like to give trio number 1 an identity that says like, okay, you guys are going to be the people who do like all the doot-dat, like instrument-y textural stuff, and then trio 2, you guys are going to be more of like the vocally stuff, that you're going to be singing words, you're going to be doing like little echoes and random things like that. And so that's kind of, I like to make sure that each of those units gets like some kind of identity, especially because I like to think of things visually too. So then when I'm I'm arranging and I'm saying, okay, when this stage performance happens or this music video happens, we will look at these 3 people or these 6 people, and they'll be singing a specific line, and this is how we can kind of make them look visually. So always kind of think about that and what the roles are of the arrangement, because it can be very easy in a large group arrangement and I'm saying like 6 parts or more. So this is like maybe like a 12 to like 100-person group, whatever. But always, it could get lost in the sauce. So you really want to be intentional about like what the roles of people are. And those roles can change throughout the arrangement, but just be kind of focused on like different identities you can give to the different singers in your group.
And someone asked how big of a group we're talking about. I mean, I think it's kind of one thing when you're talking about 12 people, 16 people in a group, like a college group, because you have a lot more control over what each person's doing. You can rehearse, you can do that, versus a virtual choir of 100 or more, where you're just kind of sending it off, and it has to be easy, it has to be digestible, it has to be performed in a way that is going to be effective without rehearsal. So it's like 2 different states of mind, kind of.
Totally.
Let's move on. That's great.
Effectively without rehearsal.
I know. It's like the worst.
It's like my nightmare.
That's why we have very specific. In this the process of arranging the bones for the varsity vocals thing, I put a lot more dynamics in than I normally would. I put a lot more directions in, adjectives that I'd never do that stuff, because I usually just get to rehearse it.
Oh yeah, the adjectives.
So just like trying to set the tone. And if you guys see that score, like you'll see not as much as I just didn't arrange it for a straight note chaser. And that one I put in a lot of stuff because I know I was not going to get to rehearse with them. I put in a lot of adjectives, triumphant, tender, stuff like that, to really set the tone, because singing a note mezzo forte is really different than singing a note mezzo forte with intensity or with like a specific visual something in mind.
Like an emotionless pond under the moonlight.
Yeah. So being specific and giving emotional and imagery context is always really good.
Yeah. You know who loves performance notes? Like paragraphs of performance notes is Eric Whitaker. You ever look at his scores? They're like insane. Is that mine? So yeah, definitely put a lot of direction into the things, especially when they're being sent out to the masses. New question.
This is kind of along the same lines. Ben Rosenbaum asks a segment on how to, I think he meant be communicative, but he said beat communicate.
Oh,
how to
yeah.
be communicative, how you want your arrangement performed. It's like it's just what we were talking about.
Right. Da da da.
Oh, this is. Should we talk about this one?
I'm like reading the question.
Yeah, we can have a quick.
Yeah.
So Cassie asks, turning a bad idea into a good idea, recognizing and managing bad/risky ideas.
Risky.
Should this song be transformed into this genre? Is this mashup doomed to failure? If the original
Yes.
version of the song has crucial distortion guitar solo, how do you do? Oh, this is a good question. If the original version has a crucial distortion guitar solo, how do you deliver without resigning yourself to a screeching cat solo?
Ooh, I love this. Great question.
Concrete examples would be good fodder for this combo. Yeah.
So
Bohemian Rhapsody, Mitch
Uh-huh.
does the guitar solo because he can pull it off and because we can add a little distortion effect on it. If you're talking about live, I would probably, and as someone who can't really pull it off without distortion, I'd recommend revamping. Maybe
not
making,
doing-
instead of a distortion guitar solo, you can kind of rewrite the line so it's reminiscent of the original guitar solo, but maybe it's a 3-part thing. Maybe it's just something that has the same overall effect as the guitar solo. It's like an instrumental section.
It's like an energy thing, right? Like
Mhm.
maybe it's just like retranslating into something that's doable for you guys, but still singable, so that you're communicating the same energy shift. Because that's really what it's about. It's not about the note necessarily. I mean, it's about the note, but like what the note does is increasing like the stakes in the song. So if you can do that in a different way, I think you're gonna achieve what you want.
Thomas Ziegler says Street Corner Symphony uses megaphones to distort when they perform live. Yes,
Oh, that's cool.
And that is awesome. I've seen that too.
Oh, that's really fun. I like that.
So back to Cassie's question about how to recognize bad ideas. I think just use your network and be like, hey, like, is this lame if we do this song in this style, or if we mash up these 2 songs together, and like listen to how it actually sounds. Like go to the piano, or like have a way to demonstrate something of how it is.
Yeah.
And then ask some friends and see if they think it's lame. And also, as you develop more, your taste will become more aware of like, maybe not this.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. You have to go through like a million bad ideas before you have a good idea. Right. So it's just like, yeah, we could be sitting here. It's like we had tons of horrible ideas like in the past. We still have horrible ideas that we just don't bring into the world. And so you just got to do to know. That being said, the mashup idea is probably a bad one. So just like let's start there, and then like try and figure out a way to make something really good. Whenever my mind goes to mashup, I poke holes in it right away, because I'm like, what is not good about this? And I rarely do that, actually. I'm quite optimistic. But when it comes to mashups, I'm just like, who's going to make fun of me for this? And how do I avoid that? But yeah.
Cool. Let's take like 1 or 2 more.
Yeah. There's a stage presence question. There's a question about...
Oh, I like Cassandra's. How do you effectively arrange a song without a soloist? So this is an ensemble piece. This is kind of like pure imagination. Creeks,
The End of Love.
So these kind of ensemble numbers, and I think it's cool to do not just choral versions of them, but infusing other elements, infusing jazz, vocal jazz, and pop, and maybe vocal percussion too. But I think the key is the soloist provides so much interest and so much personality, and so how do you do a non-soloist song while still keeping that personality and that interest? And what elements do you have to work with? And how can you use them to your advantage? You have harmony, you have rhythm, you have different timbres, you have visual stuff if it's a live performance. So like what's going to be, how is it not going to be boring? I think that's the question you should be asking yourself. And how can I use harmony and line and musicality to make something that's going to keep people's interest?
I feel like one thing that we both have kind of employed in our, I would say, ensemble type arrangements is, and I think this is actually pretty much, it kind of hits all of it, is that we split up the solo among different sections to create some movement and some story, which I think is really important for this type of thing. Totally. Because you're not sticking with one person's point of view, it's actually nice to kind of like move the melody or the lead to different people. So you'll notice in Pure Imagination it's like that. In The End of Love, it's like that. Lots of different songs. And even like back in the day, I feel like you guys did a lot of it was ensemble ones, but it was like tiny solos.
Vocals?
Yeah, vocals.
Oh yeah, I mean it was like Crazy Ever After,
which I would also
and
call that an ensemble piece.
All the Things You Are. So yeah, there's always those. But
yeah, so I think moving it around is definitely good. Creating like a sense of a story, I think, is much more important for these types of things than a single soloist.
I think if it's like, especially if it's like a homophonic piece, everyone singing together, more choral style, line and harmonic movement, and just like really being picky about every single note and every single chord to create maximum emotional impact is going to be your best friend.
Agreed.
Cool. Let's do another.
Cool. That was a great question, though.
Really good question.
I love that. I would love to see more of like ensemble pieces. I think oftentimes groups are a little bit lacking in self-awareness when it comes to like how good their soloists are. And I mean, this is just like a little bit of tough love. It's like sometimes you can really get out. I mean, I've seen groups who just like don't have amazing soloists crush ensemble music and just do so well in competition or their records and stuff. Like, use your strengths always.
I mean, this is like what acapella is made for.
Literally.
It's like you have all these amazing singers, like let's make something together. And also it just like sounds better a lot of the time.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about the mix, like, oh, is the bass too loud? Is the percussion too loud? Is the soloist too soft? Like if everyone's just singing together in a choral style, but singing it like a pop song or something,
totally.
Cool, like you can't go wrong. There's so many ways that it can be done well.
You know, we were mentioning vocals and Nor'easters, but another group in the collegiate sphere that does this really well are the Voices in Your Head. Voices. I think they rebranded to Voices. They do such a good job at like just using ensemble power to like create amazing moments. And like, you know, and like looking back on when I used to like work with them or compete with them, I never would be like, okay, that was like the one. I mean, yeah, they had some amazing soloists throughout the years for sure, but I was never like, this group is all about this soloist.
Right.
It's always about the group, which I think is really cool for an identity in general.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Awesome.
Great question.
Let's do one more.
One more.
We could do song choice. We could do, let's do this one.
Yeah. Arranging for your audience. We know so Isaiah, of course, says, I know I've been guilty of crafting arrangements, not taking into account the people who would be listening to them. That is a great question, Isaiah.
Yeah.
Your arrangements are amazing.
Yeah.
First of all.
I mean, especially if you're operating on a really high level, harmonically, rhythmically, your tendency is going to want to go like, oh, here's my bag of tricks. This makes me so excited. And I'm going to do this. But like, you have to realize sometimes if your tastes are not aligned with your audience's tastes, which if you're a super high level arranger, it's probably likely that they won't be completely aligned. You need to figure out how to reframe. I think this is something that I've done over the years is like, I don't get too crazy with things. Like I really try to see and listen to things from your average audience's perspective. And I think that's how Pentatonix has been able to connect with people. I think we do complex stuff, but in the end, everything we do is digestible in a way that the average person can understand, especially because it's only 5 people.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I know who's doing everything. I know they're doing these parts, and I can grasp it, and it's really impressive.
I mean, that's exactly the thing. It's like I went from a collegiate atmosphere where I had like 16 to 18 people at my disposal to like really create like atmosphere and energy transfers that I wanted to. But then moving into the professional sphere, it's really important that, you know, we recognize that the appeal of a cappella in the mainstream is this amazing dichotomy of accessibility versus aspiration. On one hand, people are like,
nice.
Oh, wow, a cappella. It's like this amazing thing. I don't know how they do it. It's so crazy that just 5 of them can like do that with their voices and like blah, blah, blah. But then on the other hand, people are like, well, I can literally see each person and what they're doing. And in that way, it makes it very accessible. So it's this amazing kind of like balance between me saying like, oh my God, like I could do that. And wow, I could never do that. And I think that's what makes it really interesting for people in the mainstream kind of consumer base. I think that's what makes a cappella so intriguing to them.
Yeah.
And so that's why when, as arrangers for mainstream projects, it's really important that we adjust for that and make sure that we're doing it that we're arranging something that anyone on their first listen would be like, that's really amazing and that's really cool and I get it. and therefore you have to like simplify it. I mean, a lot of you guys are super heady arrangers because you have so much understanding of music theory and so much knowledge, but it almost takes somebody with that level of knowledge and that level of understanding to then say, okay, let's like reel it in and create something that's going to be like really meaningful for just an average Joe.
Yeah, and I think the most difficult part, and what's taken me the longest to like figure out is you know how to keep things simple yet still interesting, yet still make every line fun to sing and make the entirety, the song as a whole, be really satisfying to everyone, not just simpletons, you know, not just people who don't have a musical ear, but everyone, musicians, non-musicians alike. It will be simple enough for the non-musicians to understand, but it will have enough emotional information to captivate everyone.
Oh yeah, and it's certainly not to say don't be clever. You can be clever and not have 10,000 jazz chords and a million extensions. You can be very clever with diatonic harmony.
You know, set polyrhythms up.
Yeah, you don't need that. I think it's very clever to actually use your set of limitations in a way that is going to really elevate something.
Yeah, cool. I think we should move on.
Yeah, we should.
We could do this forever.
We could. Work smarter, not harder. Thanks, Sophie. That makes a lot of sense. I always live by
Shams
that.
says that all the time.
Yeah, I'm like, don't work so hard. It's stupid.
Okay, cool. So now we're going to start with some critiques. Today we have, we're doing Bad Romance by Wilson Smith. We're doing Dance Monkey by Barnaby Woods, and Most Wonderful Time of the Year by Colin Adams. Let's start with that one.
Colin Adams.
Okay, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. Okay.
It's the most wonderful time of the year.
We have a little recording.
Christ the Savior is born. Christ the Savior is born.
Dun, 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 dun.
Okay, cool. So already I'm a little bit lost as far as like what the musical direction
Agreed.
is,
Yeah.
and the moments and the modulation. I need to be guided a little bit more, and kind of given a little more context of what's with snaps, but there are no snaps. I think that's a key element. If we had the snaps there, that would be the whole
totally
thing. Because doing that key change into the silence and then not have it, and then just a bass line out of nowhere with no rhythmic anything.
Context. Yeah, I agree.
So let's listen again.
Should we snap?
Christ the Savior is born. Christ the Savior is born. Christ the Savior is born.
Cool. I think just also looking harmonically, I think I think these parts can not move as much.
Yeah.
I think the bass is the bass. That's cool. But a lot of these inner parts, they shouldn't all be jumpy. You know, when you're creating these kind of more jazzy harmonies, it sounds the best when you have, you know, the melody's jumping, maybe the bass line's jumping, but a lot of the other parts might just be, you know, moving one note at a time.
Yeah. Like
not jumping
stepwise.
fourth, not jumping third. Like, it's just going to create a smoother sound.
And I think that's what you want to achieve, right? Like with this kind of thing, you want it to be smooth.
Right now, it just kind of sounds like
Yeah, a little clunky, I would say.
Yeah.
Nice whipping on that last word.
And then also, I think if you're going to do this modulation, maybe just continue it out of the end of born instead of born.
Yeah.
Then you start another ooh, and you're like, where's this going?
Christ the Savior is born.
Yeah, totally.
And then you're into it. So I think you just need to like guide us a little bit more and maybe take out some of these pauses.
Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun.
the most.
Cool.
I think that last spot could be more interesting too.
Also, I think because you have chords, you have cool chords there. You have great chords. The mixing, I would say, the balance of the notes in the mix need work. We're not hearing any of the cool color notes. We're hearing a lot of soprano. We need the meat of it because otherwise it just sounds off balance.
I think the soprano had it in her contract that like she.
I need to be at least 5 dB louder than everyone else.
Wonderful time of the year, with the kids jingle belling and everyone telling you be of good cheer. It's a most wonderful time of the year.
I think alto needs a little bit more love in the mix for sure, but overall, I think the construction of this is actually quite good.
Yeah, I would say in this is kind of a vocal jazz style. I think this style really stands alone without a lot of this extra movement. I think having a couple little moments of stuff is cool, but generally speaking, I would prefer to hear this just chords, everyone doing the same rhythm, everyone doing the same hits with a few moments of branching off.
Like the ensemble being all homophonically the same.
Exactly. And just letting the chords and the harmonic information kind of guide you along, because you have the snaps, you have the bass line, you have the solo, and then you just have everything else, and that's like I feel the most effective way to communicate in this style.
Yeah, this was news to me. I really don't arrange like this ever. So
yeah, because there's a lot of bell tones, a lot of stuff happening, a lot of layers happening, and to be honest, it just feels like it's too much in this style and it feels like it's muddying it up a little bit. So I would pare it down and really focus on just getting the exact right voicings of these chords and figuring out what your line is going to be for all the middle parts, and just sticking to that with a couple exceptions for moments here and there.
You know what I think it is? I think it's taking out all the medium stuff that you're doing, which is like all these like little moments, like kind of medium moments, and then taking them out, creating something homophonically the same, and then loading up for like one really cool moment where you do like a 10 note, like really cool cascade. I feel like
that's a great
Amanda's
point.
group does
the
that.
Medium moments, exactly. You have a lot of medium moments and they're not really hitting. So I would rather just keep it clean, keep it smooth, everyone together, and then a big moments. Stuff like this, the Be of Good Cheer, Be of Good Cheer, a little layer here, that's great.
That's fun. I like that, yeah.
But all the bell tones I think are unnecessary because you have the rhythm going and it's not really adding anything.
Totally.
I think we should probably move on to the next one. But this is great. This is
we were saying medium moments, not meaty moments, and not media moments.
Oh yeah, so we were saying that there are a lot of medium, like bell tone things, and parts where the different parts are doing different things, and there are a lot of different layers happening, which
it's just like lost in the sauce.
It's lost in the sauce. It's a medium moment as opposed to a big moment where everyone's doing the same thing and then it stops and there's a cascade or something very cool that happens that you're obviously drawn to.
And what we mean by bell tones is when you have like
bell tones, just like a arpeggio with different people doing the different notes.
Some people call it a pocket.
Whether it's like offset by an eighth note or whatever.
You could call it a pocket, you could call it cascade, waterfall, whatever you want.
Pocket is more of like a line.
Pocket is like
where you create a new line with it's
but usually a cascade is hocketed.
Yeah. Meaning like different parts sing each note. Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's do another one.
Lingo. Weird lingo, and I don't know who made it up. Somebody did.
Let's do Bad Romance.
Oh, Bad Romance by Lady Gaga.
Lady Gaga.
Lady Gaga. This looks like a Sibelius.
Lady Gaga.
Notation. Lady Gaga.
Okay, this one we don't have a recording. It's just a MIDI mock-up, but you know the song.
This is an all-male arrangement.
Okay, cool. First of all, I want to say this is awesome. I love it. It's a really cool and effective take on this. It sounds different than the original. Every part is hitting.
Yeah.
I think my one comment is about the notation.
So smart.
It's it's slow. So it's 64.
Oh yeah.
I feel like you should write it in 4/4,
notes.
but twice as fast. So
Yeah.
these 16ths are eighth notes because it's like we're only 3 bars in and it's like 20 seconds in already. So it's like it'll be easier to read if it's done at 128 instead
Totally.
of 64.
Totally.
per minute.
Totally.
But this is
I
great.
think there's like one chord where I was like, yeah, this could be better. I think it's somewhere around here. Yeah.
Sure thing, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love this voicing. This is a favorite voicing of mine. This like open fifth.
Yeah.
1 5
Gorgeous.
3.
Yeah.
It's great in all male too. It's awesome.
It's so rich and beautiful. It'll sound warm.
And then nice little crunchy chord. Or on love. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Okay, cool. We'll play it again. Cool. This is so cool.
Oh, I love this. I love this.
I'm loving the jazz harmony. I'm loving the substitutions. The reharms here feel really appropriate,
Intentional.
and they don't feel forced, and they feel very legit and good. And I'm a fan.
I also
and-
like that you put the drums in because they actually do give me some better context. which is
Yeah,
nice.
for sure. I'm too lazy to do
I
that.
would never do this, but like, yeah.
I think for this, I want your bad this moment at 13, 14, 15, 16. I would say unison or octaves there would be a
Yeah.
little more effective because you
Agreed.
have all this cool harmony going on, and then you get this really like spread, very kind of dark and gloomy thing.
I kind of like the idea that you did before.
romance.
Then-
There's something nice.
yeah.
Unison octave would be really effective there.
Melody pop.
Oh yeah, that could be cool. So like, romance.
yeah, something just a little different from the
Yeah,
original.
that's cool. And yeah, again, no na na digidodo, they work if it's performed the right way. So like,
So no, 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 digadodo. Is that what that is?
yeah.
No, no,
Ha ha digidodo. It has to be done a little subtle. I don't want to hear digidodo. I want to hear digidodo,
yeah,
digidodo.
just like sound effects as opposed
Exactly.
to digadodo.
It's a big downfall of groups where they get a score and they see digidodo and they say digidodo as opposed to
Digidodo.
like what digidodo is trying to represent.
Yeah,
I've heard some people that like don't write in certain syllables because they're just like, I know it's gonna get in their head the wrong way, so I'm just gonna tell it to them in person.
or a demo.
Or demo it out.
Demo it out.
Digidodo.
Yes. Cool. I like.
Oh
this.
wait, okay, hold on. If this is feeling Latin to me now, in which case I would change the bass line a little bit.
Yeah.
And maybe the drums too. I don't know if this is just it
It
seems
might
like
be
it's
a
just a
limitation
moment.
of this though.
It seems like it's just a 1-bar moment, but even still I would doom, and then maybe drop the bass out. Doom, doom, doom. So like
Yeah.
but it,
Yeah, totally.
and maybe just a little moment where the bass notes drop out, have a little hit. That could be cool.
Thanks for being thoughtful with you.
Oh yeah. I feel like this beat here maybe you should take a break, and I feel like this section wants because of the chords you have. It's so epic. It's so full,
Yeah.
and I mean I don't know if this is just a copy paste situation, but like I would say,
I want your loving, and I want your revenge. You gotta write a bad romance. Yeah, totally.
and you could even do a full on Latin jazz version of this. It'd be awesome.
I like this. Wait, where is this from?
BU Pitchman.
BU.
JK's Jonathan Coulter's alma mater.
I know.
Okay, hold on.
Belmont University.
Oh,
I was like, Boston University is not. No.
you guys call it
Belmont's
BU. It's like University of South Carolina calls it USC too, and then they just gave up. They're like, we know now it's U of SC, I think,
U of SC, yeah.
because they're like we can't compete anymore. We're not gonna bother.
It's so weak.
Okay.
Yeah. Like big flourishes.
Also, I would write in your rests, just to make it easier for people.
Breathing.
So like, actually, wait, you don't need to rest here. You're good.
Well, I need to rest because I have horrible breath support.
Dida.
Oh yeah,
Is
there's
this Dida. Dida.
Da-da,
I like Dida. Dida's cool.
da-da.
Maybe DAI. Okay, let's go to we have 5 minutes.
This is great. This is a really
This
nice
is awesome.
arrangement. We love it.
Really great job, Wilson.
BU.
Let's do our last one. Dance Monkey.
Dance Monkey.
Barnaby Woods.
Oh,
I love that name.
Barnaby. From the Overtones, from Oberlin College.
They're not British.
This is my Lisa Vanderpump voice.
Oh yeah.
I've been really into Vanderpump Rules. I like basically blasted through 5 seasons in the past 2 weeks. It's so good.
Wait, where's the?
You know what my dream is? To have children.
Monkey,
To have my children have
Barnaby.
British accents.
Right, you're gonna send them off to.
I'm
Boarding
just gonna send them
school.
off to boarding school.
Okay, here we go.
So excited.
They say, oh my God, I see the way you shine. Take your hand, my dear, and place them both in mine. You know you stopped me dead when I was passing by. Now I beg to see you dance just one more time. Ooh, I see you every time. And oh my, I like your style.
First thing for me is bass line. I think we could maybe like get a little bit more groovy with it.
Also, the way that it's written, this just bugs me to have the quarter note.
Oh,
Can you
yeah.
see my can you see my mouse at all? I don't think you can see my mouse. You can't see my mouse. Okay, I'm circling this note here.
Invisible bar line rules, y'all?
Yeah. So you don't want to cross beat 3 with a quarter note. So on Finale, it has this handy button. If you select some measures and go, I think MIDI and then retranscribe,
Yeah.
it will retranscribe it to like standardly acceptable notation.
So you can write it like this because this is like the easy way to kind of input the notes, and then it'll retranscribe it for you correctly.
Yeah, and also with these dotted eighths, they should really be like
Yeah, tied.
an eighth tied to a 16th,
Absolutely.
etc.
Choral directors.
But just a little nitpicking. And yeah, so for
I
the-
actually think that's kind of big nitpicking because it actually makes the music easier to read and really understand like kind of what your place is rhythmically.
yeah, you want to see where beat 3 is
Yeah,
visually.
Totally.
And I think for the bass line here, once the drums come in this kind of beat, you're really gonna want to go with the bass. Well, go with the drums with when you're writing your bass line. So like for instance.
Passing by. Now I beg to see you dance just one more time. Ooh, I see you you every time. And oh my, I like your
Yeah, like I would
style.
pickups like good.
Or the other option, because I know later on that bass line does get busier.
Oh,
Another option is to have the drums do something a little bit less driving, because when you have a beat like that, a drum beat like that, it implies that you're like missing something.
Totally,
you're missing this
totally.
driving bass. So you could dial back the drums, do something different with the drums, to make it so that you're not missing this thing. If you did like just more washy, more like downbeats.
Yeah. I guess the
and not
drums
just this,
really
like
exactly like that to me for like it's like
So if you let's do this bass line.
yeah.
Ding, ding, ding,
Yeah.
ding, ding,
Oh,
something like that. So just like something a little bit
slower.
more sparse. If you do want to build up to the full bass line.
Make me wanna cry. And now I beg to see you dance just one more time. So they say, dance for me, dance for me, dance for me, hey. Never seen any.
Cool. Don't love that little choice there.
Yeah.
It feels a little random because you haven't done anything remotely like that in the
Out.
song yet. And this is the sharp 4 is like a very out choice. Or isn't it? Or the 7. Yeah. The dominant 7 to the major 7. It just feels a little
Well, without giving context harmonically with the other parts, I feel like it just feels like a random out.
yeah, it feels a little random. Whereas in the last arrangement, like every chord change felt really specific and intentional and smooth. This one feels a little jagged and a little out of nowhere.
Totally.
To do the things you do before. They say, move for me, move for me, move for me, hey. And when you're done, I watch you do it all again. I said, oh my God, I see you walking by. Take my hand, my dear, and look me in the eye. Just like a monkey, I've been dancing my whole life.
You want it to move like range
Yeah,
wise?
yeah, with more pickups and licks. Yeah, exactly.
That's cool. Yeah.
Let's
Let's go to this little section here because this dung dung section feels a little weird.
Just like a monkey, I've been dancing my whole life. But you just been.
I like the effect. The actual syllable and performance of the syllable feels a little silly, but I like the notes that you chose and I like the overall effect. I think it just if you perform it a little differently, it might hit a little better.
Sure.
Dong. It's a little like throaty the way they sing it. Dong.
My whole life, but you just.
Well, it sounds like a parody. It sounds like a parody.
I think a little like breath here. Dong, 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 dong.
Just
Or
changing the
dong, dong, dong,
yeah.
dong.
We'll make it more
Yeah.
like Beltony rather than like honky.
Yeah, because it's a really cool part, and it does feel a little bit silly.
Yeah.
See me dance just one more time. I see you every time. Don't mind, I like your style. You.
I think here you can, at this point in the song, you can have more words, more background vocal and less pad, I think, because you have the rhythm sections in, it's driving, we've established the harmony, and I think you can have more like fun background vocals at this point.
For sure.
Make me wanna cry. Now I beg to see you dance just one more time. So they say, dance for me, dance for me, dance for me, oh.
Time Cascade.
I like your style. You make me wanna cry. Now I beg to see you dance just one more time. So they say.
Sometimes I like cascades these days. I feel like the cascades that have a lot of energy, I feel like are the ones that start on the offbeat, like the ga da ga ga. One more time, boo doo doo goo goo, instead of one more doo 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 doo.
Yeah, I think if everything is moved an eighth note to the right, that'd be cool.
It would be more
One more
energetic.
time.
Ga. And then you have time for the get it back into it.
And maybe like on an O might be better.
Oh, or do.
Oh, because when you're on an O, you can then swell at the end of it. Oh, and then right into the next
Yeah, what do they
section.
have? What do they have now?
dung.
Dong.
It kind of fades away.
Yeah,
Dance with me, dance just one more time. So they say, dance with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
feel like we want to move to the measure.
yeah, you don't want to have a breath there. So, dung, 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 dung. Dance, my dance, my dance, da da da. Ba-da-ba-dee-boop.
Dance with me, oh.
Cool. This is cool. I love the idea here. I think the bass line can have more 16th note pickups instead of just doom 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 doom. And also the way that they perform it, it should kind of be accented on the downbeats and pulled away on the upbeats instead of doom 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 doom. Or sorry, I meant the opposite. The offbeats should be accented. Doom 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 doom.
Because we imagine.
Doom doom.
Yeah, exactly.
So that could be cool. And
This is
cool.
great though.
This is great. I love
A lot of cool musical
a lot of
ideas.
great ideas in here.
Love it. So fun. I think we should move into our second half of our segment. We are welcoming the incredible, the
Ed Boyer.
incomparable Ed Boyer.
Do we see you?
Where's Eddie?
I
Ed
unmuted
B.
him,
Ed B, you're unmuted.
but I don't see him.
No, he's in there. He told me.
He has to. Oh, there he
Yeah.
is.
Oh,
Oh, hey.
our sweet Ed. Can you put
Say
on
something?
speaker view?
Check 1, 2, test.
There you go.
Wow.
Nice. Look at you
Oh.
in the studio. I've never been to the studio.
I know your studio's so nice.
You gotta swing by.
Let's
Yeah.
go.
Can everyone hear everyone? Is everyone good? Yeah, can you turn up a little bit?
Yeah.
Turn up your gain, Ed.
1 second.
Oh my god.
So exciting.
I know, I'm so excited. It's like we talk about it all the time, but it's like this is gonna be different and fun.
How's that? Better?
Oh, nice.
Yeah, much
Crisp,
better.
Clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful. King of
Can
mixing
you put a
your own
little,
vocals.
little verb on that?
Yeah. Do you want to just
I
auto
mean-
tune it?
No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that.
Is this good?
No, no,
this is a
perfect.
podcast.
Perfect. Okay. I'm gonna do the whole
yeah.
thing like this.
I love it. Okay, let me pull up our questions.
We did compile some questions from the participants using the Facebook group that we have for Arranging and Chill. So we're gonna, go off from those a little bit. We have
Is
some
that a
of our
little
own questions.
champagne?
My
Oh,
my wife is zooming her 20th high school reunion right now.
So you have to be drunk.
So they're all doing prosecco and champagne.
Yes.
Oh, fun.
Just like casually.
I had to get in on
I
it.
know.
Champagne flute.
He's like, oh, sorry, I didn't see you there.
So funny.
I love that.
Cool. Let's dive in.
Ed, it's so amazing to have you here. It's so cool to talk to people who are really behind the scenes, because I feel like we're also behind the scenes people, but we get so much energy out of creating stuff and really giving a platform to people who are going to be great. And I feel like you are such an amazing behind the scenes person. So I'm excited for you to actually come out and just talk to everybody.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool.
It's like his quinceanera.
This is your
His coming out
quinceañera.
party. Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
So Ed, we have some questions, but before we dive into all that, can you just give us your musical background and kind of how you got into acapella and acapella mixing?
Sure. So how far back do you want to go? Just
When you were born, the day you were born.
Just like Cliff's notes.
Yeah.
Cliff's Notes. Okay. So I grew up in Ohio, and unlike now, there was really no acapella happening in Ohio. Now it's like, especially Dayton, it's like a hotbed. But I had never really heard it. I'd seen the Spike Lee documentary, and I had seen Rockapella do
Wait,
Carmen
what's that one
Sandiego.
called again for people's reference?
Do it acapella,
Do it acapella, right?
which was either 90 or 91, and Spike Lee follows around the Persuasions and Rockapella and a bunch of other groups. Mint Juleps were one of my favorites on that. And I think we had the cassette. So that was in my brain someplace, but not really like a defining thing. I was a singer. I played instruments. my mom was an organist and music teacher. Her mom was an organist and music teacher. And music was sort of my the thing that opened doors for me. It was how I made friends by being in musical groups. It's what got me into college. It's how I met my wife. So it was always sort of it's like, oh, I'm kind of good at this thing, and that's where life was taking me.
Yeah.
I went to Tufts and New England Conservatory to do classical voice. And when I got to Tufts, that's the first time I had seen any a cappella, really in person. And it seemed like a good way, because I was doing all the serious music stuff at conservatory. It seemed like a good way to do music that was not serious to me. It was more about hanging out, more about being social, more about having fun with it, as opposed to like being locked in a practice room or studying all night or being in a serious ensemble, that sort of thing.
Amazing.
So I joined a group. I joined the Bubs at Tufts and I was like an impressionable 18-year-old and thought like this was the most amazing thing. They're having so much fun. These guys all must be like amazing musicians or whatever. And then I got in the group and they were like, oh, you read music? You'll probably be MD next year. So I was MD for 3 years. And at the end of it, we had done some recording and it was super expensive. We recorded at a place called Longview Farm, which was in Massachusetts. And it was like this place where you go and you camp out and you record. Jay Giles Band assembled this huge studio in a barn and a farmhouse. And then the Rolling Stones went there once when they were doing like Detox and made it their like hang out and record music and detox, hide from the media kind of place. And that was just amazing. Like it was literally a barn full of like Telefunken mics and Neve gear and all this crazy stuff.
Wow.
And we did an album there. And that sort of, I had messed around with recording, but that was something that was like, oh my God, this is just amazing being around all this stuff. Like I'm staying in the Keith Richards suite and recording into this Neumann mic. And it's,
and what was your role on that album? Were you like music directing? Were you producing? Were you... What was your role there?
So that was my sophomore year, and I was music directing, and Deke was producing. That's when I met Deke.
Mm-hmm.
Who's that?
And then we went back there my junior year. Same thing. I was MDing, and he was producing. And then after that, we're like, that was really awesome, but it was really, really expensive. Like I think we had to raise like $35,000 to record there.
Yeah.
And this was right around the time when Pro Tools was becoming accessible. They had the Digio one, and for like $1,000 you could buy the Digio one and like the basic Pro Tools that had whatever 32 tracks or something. So we kind of said, well, why don't we? I came to the group and said, if you buy this for me, I'll record your album for free, basically. And it took them a while to come around to it, but eventually they did.
And what was what was the scene like at that point, as far as like other people recording a cappella independently on their own?
Yeah, what year was it?
So this was, let's see, that would have been around 2002, 2003.
Huh.
And this was like right when digital audio was taking out, like Auto-Tune came out in 1999. So like all of a sudden you could have an a cappella album that wasn't like egregiously out of tune if you had access to it. Like
Okay.
if you could raise tens of thousands of dollars and get to a studio.
Right.
But then it sort of got to the point a few years after that where you could afford things. So I think the group fronted me enough money to get a laptop, a Digio 2, and like a Rode NT1A. And I just set up, and basically the year after I was in college, I spent the whole year just making this album. And for the group, they were saving tens of thousands of dollars and had somebody who was spending unlimited time on their album. And I think we did, maybe we recorded 20 songs and ended up keeping 14, 15 songs. And we flew out and mixed with Bill. So Bill had been doing it at this point in time for several years. Dave Sparandio was also doing it. If you know John Clark, he was sort of the Boston guy who was doing it. And I actually worked with John. So I was in Hyena Sound for a couple summers, and John did their albums. So I got to know John that way, and I would go over to his place and like help track groups at his place. So we made that album. It was received well. And then I was sort of figuring out my life, what I wanted to do. We moved from Boston to New York, and my wife got a job in Greenwich, Connecticut. So she was commuting out, and I was commuting into the city to do internships. I was interning at a place called JSM Music, which is like a jingle house. And we got $20 a day, and that covered your subway fare and like a bagel or something. And you would go in before the sun was up, and you would leave after the sun was out. And just sort of hoping to move up in the ranks there, like if you wanted to write or if you wanted to engineer. And on the weekends, I was doing a cappella stuff to basically pay for my life so I could keep interning. And then 2007, we were doing another Bubs album, and we were out mixing that. And I've been talking to the engineer at the studio where I was working, and got to know him well enough that I could sort of like ask what he made and those kinds of questions. And I was out at Bill Hare's house, looking out his window at his amazing view, thinking like, he's got a good thing going on that's just completely outside of the mainstream music world. And in the mainstream music world, there are these people who are killing themselves just to get by living in New York. So I called the studio where I was interning from Bill's house and was like, yeah, I'm not going to come in anymore. Cause I was making more on the weekends doing a cappella than like the guy whose job I was gunning for at the studio.
Yeah.
And-
You're
and-
like, wait a second. It's
Yeah,
like
like, what-
right here.
Exactly. What am I doing? Like there were no windows in the place. Like it was kind of depressing. So that's kind of when I made the jump to doing it, quote unquote, full time. And that was also at that point in time, it was right when the recession was hitting. So like, it was hard for people to find jobs in general. So it was like, well, I've got this thing going on. I may as well just sort of roll with it and see where it goes. In 2007, and then 2009, Deke, who I knew from doing the Bubs albums, started doing the Sing Off, and called me up, and he's like, I need somebody else here on the ground with me who could direct, who could arrange, who could manipulate recordings, just somebody who could do all the stuff while I'm trying to like
Put out fires
and get this thing to not be just the crazy circus it was. So that was 2009. And then, that's when all the really kind of crazy stuff started snowballing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And
The golden years of mainstream acapella, as they say.
The golden years of my boy.
Cool. That's
I love
awesome.
that.
And then talk a little bit about your arranging. Like, when did you first arrange? What's your process like? I mean, these are a bunch of questions, but
Sure.
yeah. When did you first arrange?
So, like I said, I started as a singer and it was sort of drafted to be the MD of my group. So it was kind of like, well, I have to learn how to arrange. Like, it's the summer after my freshman year and I need to be able to arrange by 2 months from now.
This is your job now.
Yeah, that's my job now. So, and I had done, like, I was in conservatory, so I'd done like choral writing and all the, voice leading stuff, and I knew that stuff.
Secret base.
So I was the summer after my freshman year, I was working in a factory. A bunch of friends and I got jobs at the factory where they make Cracker Jack in my hometown, place called Wyandotte. And we all worked third shift, so we worked like midnight to 7. So I would do that, and I was teaching myself vocal percussion and teaching myself to arrange because I just had to know this stuff when I got back to school. And over the summer, I did like, 3 or 4 arrangements or whatever, so I had something to come back with. And one of the ones I did that summer actually was Bills, 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 which ended up, 15 years after that being on Glee in the post Super Bowl episode, which had like a 50 million person lead-in audience. So like literally the second or third arrangement I ever did as an 18-year-old.
Was it unchanged?
I think I had like some chords where I was missing a factor or something that I snuck in when we did it the second time around, but it was pretty much just
the
18 arrangement
in Ohio.
Oh.
Love it.
Yeah.
I mean, icons are icons.
Yeah.
No matter the age.
And then what was your process like then arranging? Is it different than it is now when you arrange?
So, I mean, when I started, it was pencil and paper. Those ones were done pencil and paper. And that was right around the time notation software was becoming a thing. So not too shortly after that, I was on to Finale. And then that was pretty much my process up until mid to late 2000s, when it just became cumbersome to have to once I had my rig up and going, then it just seemed like an unnecessary sort of middle step. Like, well, I have the idea and I could just show somebody exactly what it sounds like immediately, or I could sit and tinker with Finale, especially because I don't play keys proficiently enough to play into Finale. So it's like sitting and pointing and clicking with Finale is torture. So when I could just cut that out and sing the parts I wanted to sing in, clean it up, there was really no looking back from there. Especially because when you're doing it that way, when you hear something you don't like, immediately, like, oh, that doesn't work, and I know instantly that it doesn't work, and I can change it. Whereas with Finale, it's like, well,
Maybe in voices it'll work, and
yeah, I think that if they do it the way I want them to do it, then it might work, but I won't know until I go to the concert and it sucks in front of my face,
There's a lot of interest in DAW arranging in this particular group of people, so it's nice to hear your take on that.
Yeah. Cool. Should we go to some of these questions?
Yeah, we have some really good questions by some of our participants.
Oh, I think first another thing is kind of like the general theme, and I think why your you is so unique here is like as an arranger and a mixer, like what are some common pitfalls of arrangers when they arrange for the studio, and like what are some things that you get in mixes and you're like, wow, they really shouldn't have done it this way, and
what can they do?
How can they avoid mistakes like that?
Right. Well, so my brain sort of does two things at the same time. One is I see a lot of mistakes happening from a mile away, and I think, oh, here it comes. Here's the thing I know is not going to work, but this is what they want to do. The other part of my brain is saying, like, well, this is their idea. This is their baby. I need to figure out a way to make whatever their idea is work. You know what I mean? An example. So here's something that happens all the time with arranging, especially people who arrange in Finale or Sibelius, where they're not playing a lead vocal along with it. A bell tone transition, right? So you have your chords spelled out, not factoring in for the fact that one of those tones is already being held out by the soloist, right? So inevitably you get to mix and it's like, oh, I'm not hearing the third bell tone. Well, it's like, that's the same note the soloist is singing. And you're only going to hear it if I turn it up so loud that it's louder than the soloist, at which point it's just a giant mess. And the random baritone part is louder than the lead vocal is singing. So to a normal person, it doesn't make any sense, but it's what you want to hear as the arranger. So there's lots of things like that where just very practically speaking, it becomes difficult.
So like cognitive dissonance between the arranging mentality and just like someone the listener's mentality, right? Like somebody who's just kind of like, this
Right.
is what I should be listening for. It's the lead vocal, and then this thing should support that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like how to extrapolate and get out of the finale and like, well, that note should be there and I want to hear it and I arranged it that way. So like that's what I'm listening for versus what the average person is listening for. Like, this is pleasant music. I like it.
Right.
Right.
Well,
I think that the hard pill for arrangers to swallow, I think, is this. By far the most important thing in your song is the lead vocal. The second most important thing by a long shot is drums. Third most important is bass. Everything else combined is less important than that.
Take note.
And it doesn't make sense because you spend all your time arranging and all your time in rehearsal on that other stuff.
Yeah.
But you have to separate how much time have I spent on it, how much have I invested in it, with what is somebody actually hearing
Yeah.
when they listen to this.
Actually, we were talking about this earlier. Someone was asking on how to effectively arrange a song without a soloist. And I think as an arranger, this is one of the best ways you can accurately hear what you're wanting to hear is do something with no drums and no soloist and just a homophonic piece. Because like, you're going to be able to hear what you want to hear in that situation because you don't have drums to deal with, you don't have bass, you don't have soloist, you don't have all these things that are taking up space away from your work.
Like if you want to be like super arrangey,
Yeah,
I think that's what you're getting at, right? If you want to, if you want to be like, I'm the arranger.
I mean, that's the best way to like to hear it without making sacrifices for the mix.
Like if you're trying to put it on your arrangement portfolio, perhaps you would choose a song that you know,
or even like a moment where the drums and bass and solos drop out and there's a cool thing that happens.
Yeah.
But I think it's when all those things come together and are layered on top of each other, that's when your job gets tricky and you're like, I can only do so much.
Yeah, it's really a similar thing is because I judge a lot of ICCA shows and things. Sometimes like you'll after the show or whatever at the reception, you'll be talking to MDs from groups and they'll be asking you about all these layers of their performance. And it's like, oh, well, did you catch the storyline that this alto 2 was in love with this guy and between the songs when we were doing the transition? And it's like, no, like I was trying to write and watch it and I'm getting what's on the surface. And you can't expect, all the other things are important, but the things that people notice are the things on the surface. And I think it's the same in the studio. It's like, well, yes, the chords are important, but that doesn't mean people need to notice them. And yes, the subdivision of the hi-hat is important. That doesn't mean people should be noticing it. Like you said, it's all working for a bigger thing, but you have to keep in mind, what is somebody hearing who's never heard that, who has no frame of reference, and they just hear 20 seconds of your song? What matters to that person,
I totally feel you on that. I tell groups this all the time and people this, like, your ICCA judges are not getting your personal essay with like the deep analysis of your set. It's like they're going by exactly what they're seeing and hearing. And on top of that, they have to write down a bunch of stuff. So yeah, that's really good advice.
I think this goes nicely into Colin's question that he asked on our Facebook group. I feel like Ed has a very clean style of mixing. Everything fits well together. How do you go about carving space in an arrangement or a mix so that everything exists where you want it to? The listener's attention is directed where you want, and things aren't fighting for space. What do you feel is underused? This is like a lot of questions, but what do you feel is an underused yet valuable tool in creating good mixes / arrangements?
Oh, geez.
Basically, just like space is
space. Yeah.
How do you go about carving space as an arranger and as a mixer?
So, I think one thing that's difficult is, and one thing that I think separates really seasoned arrangers from a lot of younger arrangers is knowing what naturally comes to the forefront and what naturally hangs back and sits in the background. Um, one of the best arrangers at giving you a foreground and a background naturally is Tom Anderson. He's sort of famous with mixers that like you can take all of, if somebody records a tom chart, you can take all the faders, set them at 0, and it's going to make sense as a song. There's going to be stuff in the back, there's going to be stuff in the front, and it's going to make sense in that way. What you find with, somebody who's a junior and on their 20th arrangement, they could be a brilliant musician, but what you find yourself having to do is move faders every bar, every 2 beats, just constantly moving faders to be like, look at this thing, don't look at that thing, look at this, like panning everything. Just, it's a lot more work to get it to make sense as a song and as a sort of, visual, if you were thinking of it as a visual. So, I think what you can do is right when you're imagining parts to begin with, think of, is this a foreground part or is this a background part? And is the nature of the part conducive to where it sits?
Like the vowel or the dynamic marking or whatever it may be, the range.
Yeah. All of those things combined, where is that going to put it naturally?
Right. So you're not going to want like an ooh meant to be in the foreground with dots meant to be in the background.
Totally.
Cool. You want to ask one?
Yes, we want to talk about Glee.
Okay.
Your process and your experience on that, particularly about, and this is a question from Yang Chen, particularly about how you arrange / mix the Warbler tracks and why they sound so full and pristine. So I guess achieving fullness and clarity in your mixing. Like if you have any like technical tips or.
And I think arranging too, specifically on that one too. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
so
go ahead. No, that was it.
So the process on that was, so 2010, we were doing season 2 of the Sing Off. This was like 2 weeks after we finished taping. I was sticking around the mix and I got a call from the business manager of the Bubs who said, yeah, I just got a call from, Dante De Laurento, who is one of the executive producers from Glee. He's like, I was in my like biology class and my phone rang and I went out and answered it, and it was like the producer of Glee. So they asked them. So the Glee people famously like had an ear to the ground with a cappella. Like they listened to Boca and all that stuff, and that's why like "Don't Stop Believing" is basically a ripoff of who did the track?
Don't Stop Believing?
Yeah.
You mean Somebody to Love?
No, Don't Stop Believing.
Who did? What do you mean? Who did the track?
I thought that was like basically kind of ripped from a
another acapella group.
Yeah, from an acapella group.
No, that's Somebody to Love.
Somebody to Love.
Vocals.
Okay. But anyway, they had heard the Bubs from Boca.
Mm-hmm.
So they asked them to basically to come in and voice this new group, to voice the Warblers. And the business manager of the group, Evan, told them that they would do it under the condition that I could produce them, which like is a crazy like hardball move for a college sophomore to be like, we're only going to do it if we can have our guy come in. But it's like the biggest compliment anyone's ever paid me, to be like, we're only going to do it with our guy. So part of the reason is because this was still back when like acapella was far enough off the radar that people didn't really understand what it took to get a recording produced. Like you see a lot more contemporary acapella now sort of peppered around culture, just being done by music houses because they get how to do it now. But at that point in time, it was still like, the producer who they had hired before me, who ended up being technically the producer the whole time, Tommy, his plan was still like to set up some area mics and bring in the group and have them sing around some area mics. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the reasons they were like, no, we got to have our guy come in. So we arranged. I arranged Teenage Dream when I was still out in LA mixing the Sing Off stuff, and we knew a little bit about the group, the character of the Warblers or whatever. So we knew we had to modify the sound of like what the Bubs normally did in the studio to match that character. One, because it was going to be performed on screen, and all our albums for the years leading up to that have been like, what's the craziest stuff we can do in the studio? And it was not going to make sense, seeing a bunch of people sing that on screen.
Right.
So we sort of came up with a sort of conceptualized something that was clean. It would make sense on TV and make sense on a soundtrack, but still be somewhat believable while these people are singing it on screen. And believable as in like Glee's bar of believable, which is like obviously everything is done in a studio and
Right.
lip synced, but not like to the point where like, why do I hear a rock guitar when it's a bunch of people singing?
For sure.
So we did the demo. I just arranged straight into Pro Tools at my apartment at the Oakwood or whatever. All just me singing. We sent it in. They loved it. And there's a thing, demo love in the industry, where like when people hear a demo and they like it, they don't want anything to change from it.
Demoitis.
But yeah, but we still had to get the group singing on it. So back on the East Coast, we were going to go to what was Avatar at the time in New York, which now is Berkeley owned and called, they reverted the name.
Oh,
Who knows what it's called? Like the Power Station, or they renamed it back to what it was before Avatar was the thing.
Power Station.
But we didn't know what to expect. So the group drove down from Boston to my place, and we basically pre-recorded at my house because we didn't know what was going to happen in the studio. So we stayed up till like 2 a.m, recording vocals at our place. And then we got up in the morning, drove into the city, went to Avatar on 57th, and sort of recorded again, or recorded on top of what I'd done. And then, so this was all sort of like everyone was figuring out roles. Like I was the arranger. I was there in the studio producing the vocals, but he was the producer. And we had an engineer there. And at that point in time, I was still gunning to have Bill mix it. Because Bill had done all the Bub stuff up until that point. He was a much more seasoned mixer than I was. And they said no, they wanted to have their team do it. And I wasn't super comfortable with that. Just because that situation rarely ends well. There's so many things about vocal percussion, vocal bass that like just are not intuitive and people don't know, and you don't want somebody figuring that out sort of on the fly for something that's like the biggest project you've done in your life up until that point. So after that session, we're all operating on like 4 hours of sleep and like 2 days of constant recording. I went to, my mother-in-law lives in the city, so I stayed at her house. I went to her house and stayed up and submixed stems of the song at her apartment. And then we went back in the studio the next day, and I could come in with, instead of just, 100 tracks of raw vocals, 10 stems that kind of made sense as a thing. And then, as was with all the songs, we never worked with Darren Criss in the studio. We did all that stuff. We had a demo vocal. Then they would send it to LA, take out the demo vocal, and Darren Criss would record his vocals. And then we would never hear it again until it aired.
Oh.
We have a question from Rachel. What are stems?
Stems.
Yeah.
So stems are, so you have 100 tracks of vocals, right? 10 of them are your beatbox and beatbox samples and everything that has to do with that. A few of them are your vocal bass. Maybe you have a primary, whoever your deepest, roundest bass is, doing like the main bass stuff, but then you still have a bass section of people. So you have a lot of tracks that are all categorized with bass. And then you have sections, and then you have maybe more foreground background textures, then you have leads, and you have harmonies. So you have all these different elements, these sort of subcategories of tracks. I basically mixed each subcategory so that when we got back in the studio, I could say, okay, here's a stereo track of bass, here's a stereo track of percussion, here are all the background tracks, here are the foreground tracks, here are the leads and harmonies, so that when their people were mixing it, it was more what they're used to, which is like, you have a stereo piano track. You don't have 20 tracks of each note on the piano that you have to balance and figure out. So it was sort of like, it's when you buy something par baked at the grocery store that you just heat up, then it was kind of like that.
Yeah, it makes it more user friendly and yeah, it's more dummy friendly, so that like they would have the most opportunity for success having the stems come from you. Yeah, cool.
Great question, actually.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's do another one.
Love it. Such interesting insight, Ed.
Let's do Brett's question.
Oh yeah.
Would love to hear y'all talk about if you believe there is a limit, if any, to digital manipulation to all vocal recordings at which it is not considered to be a cappella, and why. Why don't you go first, Ed, and then we'll.
Why don't I go first? My answer is who cares?
Yeah.
Like the idea of being able to put a definition on what is a cappella, when you can't even put a definition on what is music, seems so absurd to me. The answer to that question is so individual, and every person will give you a totally different answer, and there's a bell curve to it. Like if you look at the middle of the bell curve, there's a pretty typical answer of like, oh, it had to be done with human voices and kind of sound like it was done with human voices, and then if you go to the right of that curve, it's like, well, it needs to have originated as a human voice, but then you could do whatever you want to it. And if you go to the left of that curve, it's like eventually you get to, well, it has to be off microphone and acoustic. It's like, so everyone has their own answer.
And then at the far left, it has to be the person coming to my house and singing to me in my ear without any microphones involved.
Well, it has to, it has to be in a literal chapel. Yeah. You know what I mean?
In a literal chapel.
But my thing is, I think when I was younger, I was more idealistic about that kind of thing. The older I get and the more projects I do, the more I think, I don't care what you want to do. I want to try to make what you're doing good. And there's so much of this stuff now that it's better if there are people attempting all the different levels of it. I want to hear an album that's just 4 people around an Omni mic. I want to hear an album that's 800 tracks of unrecognizable digital noise. You know what I mean? It's like that can all exist, and it can all be good. It can all be compelling. And if it makes you feel something, who cares? Who cares what the label is?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with you, Ed. I feel like on, it doesn't really matter where you are on the spectrum of
what you consider
purist or
yeah.
I think to answer Brett's question, it's pretty limitless, honestly. Like I think there's room for everything to be on that spectrum, but to your point, for it to be good is the point. I think is the important piece of that.
I think the key thing is like having a goal, having what your thing, what your project, what your group is going to be, and committing yourself to that. So like Pentatonix has a very specific kind of way that they want their vocals to sound. And it's something we're kind of working with right now with a bunch of original songs that we're doing. We're trying to find where that line is. But, I think generally they're pretty committed to their stuff sounding, for the most part, like vocals.
Right.
And then, a lot of college groups and like A Squared, for example, is a good example of a group on the other side. who's basically using vocals just as an origination
Exactly.
and
Like a
going
point
off
of departure,
point of
and then-
departure and then going off of anything. And I think it comes down to who you're making music for, what your audience is, what your audience is expecting, what you want to give them. And it's just about choices, about individual choices by groups, by individuals, and like just committing to your vision, whatever that vision is, and not worrying about who, because like you said, everyone has a different definition of what they consider to be a cappella. So like, just do you, basically.
Just do you. I think it's also kind of goes back to something we were talking about earlier. It's like, if you're looking at like, you got to know your audience. So if we're looking at mainstream acapella, mainstream consumer base, I think keeping more towards the pentatonic side of things, where it's like, okay, we can see these people doing these things that are like recognizable and accessible to us, makes it cool for like just the average Joe.
I think it's also like you said, you can see, which is very important because acapella is so visual now, and like pretty much everything exists with a visual element attached to it.
Oh yeah.
Would you say?
Well, that's like there was a thread where people were asking what was the thing you would show to somebody if you wanted to show like how extreme you could go with production, and all the things being named were before YouTube really took off, because as soon as you had the visual context, it so many things that you could do didn't make sense.
Right.
With that said, though, I think the box of what you can do sonically can expand if the box of what you do visually also expands. I do think a lot of video for a cappella now, it like is hyper literal when it doesn't need to be.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if you were a pop group, or if you were a band, a lot of videos don't show anybody playing or singing music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just something that goes with the story of the song. And people don't even think twice about it. Whereas a cappella is still, I think, stuck in the very like, oh, it's a ballad. We need to be in a field staring at the sunrise, looking at the grains of wheat and gestating with our hands and being very literal about what we're singing. Like, I feel like that needs to evolve as well to make room for what.
I think it's become less artistic in a way, because I think a cappella artist groups feel trapped, and they feel like they have to, because of what I think made the mainstream opinion of a cappella is, and the mainstream expectation of a cappella is, they feel like they need to demonstrate that and show it and say, oh, here's this person singing this part, here's this person singing this part. Whereas I think that is a valuable tool. It's not the only tool.
I think that it's one of those things where a cappella is still very niche. And so an educational approach to a cappella is like kind of the way that mainstream has been going. And what I mean by educational is literally showing people what a cappella is and having a cappella be the style.
Here's the bass singer singing the bass line. Now you know. Here's the drummer.
Yeah.
Here's
like,
this part building in, and like it's beating them over the head with it, kind of like, get it.
Sure.
It's what it is.
Well, that's
I agree with you, Ed. Like I agree with you on that. It maybe is time. It can be time for us to evolve past that and treat a cappella as not so niche. But I do understand the kind of impetus for like why someone would feel like, okay, I really should show this like bass slide, because
sure. Yeah, it's
like the identity of the thing is still like, this is an a cappella thing.
right.
It
still has a novelty factor to it, and it's not quite, most a cappella music isn't quite living on its own as music.
And big thing, most a cappella music is still covers in mainstream, and so that's why we want to say, okay, this is what we added, this is why we're important to this conversation.
Sure.
Once mainstream a cappella music has more originals, then we will see more kind of conceptual storylines when it comes to music videos and stuff like that.
Sure.
Wait, also side note, there's someone named Benjamin Allen in here. That's my middle name. So awesome. Side note.
Like fully on the side.
Speaking of names
in here.
and the Sing Off season 2. So we brought Ben on, and I always had guilt that my my last name wasn't Lois, because we had Ben and Deke, and we were like one name away from being Sharon Lois and Bram.
Wait, what is that?
Who is that? We don't know who this is.
Oh my God, I'm so old.
Yeah, dude, I mean, listen, you went to college and I was like still 11.
Everyone Google Sharon Lois and Bram.
Is that a law firm?
No,
Wait, should I just do it right now? and
Just
show
go
everyone?
right now.
Just Google it. Corey Slutsky is laughing.
Yeah,
What's
see, he's
up?
old enough to know.
So it's like
I think she's just laughing that it's a funny situation, not that she knows who this is.
to heal a thumbs up if that is the case.
Okay, this is something. Wow.
Yeah,
Should we watch a video?
Oh my God, who are these people?
this Sharon Lois and Bram.
Who's the elephant? Oh, Brad the elephant. Cute.
Skinnamarink-y dinky dink, skinnamarink-y doo. I love you.
Skinnamarink-y dinky dinky, skinnamarink-y doo. I love.
Okay.
Okay,
think
I
that's
fully
enough.
cannot watch more of that.
Well, now I know who Sharon Lois and Bram are. I think I'm sure you told me that before, and I just forgot.
Probably.
It's something
But-
you actively took out of your schema because it's so,
So-
debilitating to watch.
So going back to what you were saying, knowing your audience, I think a couple things I would want to say in that are one, if you are in fact making a cappella for mainstream audiences, you absolutely have to be really focused on what they're ready to hear. I think a lot of people are not making a cappella for mainstream audiences, but emulating things that are just because it's kind of the standard way of doing things.
That's a
And then
great-
the other thing I would say is I think, you know, when Pentatonics first started, we were coming from this age of like, let's see how much we could do with digital audio, to all of a sudden we did an album with literally a non-doubled voice per part, right? The first Pentatonics album was just like one track of one person per part. And it was really it was the first, yeah, like they would not let, there were no doubles or triples or anything on the
or which one was it?
volume one was single tracked.
Single track. I have to go look at that because I
Yeah.
do not remember that.
Like if you listen to Aha, it's like,
Yeah.
it's insane because it's literally just one track per person.
Oh, I gotta pull up those sessions now.
Aha, one track per person.
Should I find it? Should I find it?
Find the second.
But it made sense because they were first to market. So they were, for a cappella people, it was like, well, why are you going and doing this album that's where we were 10 years ago? And it was like, well, because we're re-explaining this to people. But I think,
Oh my gosh, you're right. There are like
That is insane.
8 tracks in the session.
yeah, there's nothing there.
That is
So-
insane.
So I think they've sort of been, yeah. And the top one's what, the mix?
Yeah, where's the other parts? I'm missing something.
Oh.
Oh, there's some stuff hidden. Oh, Kevin Old. I like re-recorded stuff. It looks like. Oh, there are doubles. There are doubles here.
But were
There are
they
doubles, but I don't know if we use the doubles.
Use them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we did, but it was extremely sparingly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the tracking session, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, so I feel like Pentatonics has sort of been, in some ways, kind of demonstrating the history of what was evolving in a cappella 10, 15 years before they came onto the scene. And in a way has been priming the audience for more, like they started using triples, they started using more layered percussion. Eventually, like if anyone's going to be able to take the leap and say like, you know what, here's some stuff that's going to challenge the everyday person's opinion on what is a vocal, this might be the time to do it, or that time may never
Right.
happen again, you know?
Yeah. True.
such an interesting?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to
insight.
see where the conversation goes with the current mixes that we're working
Yeah.
on.
We're like literally figuring these things out
Like right
as
now.
we go right now. So
Yeah. Yeah, so Ed has done a without giving away too much, Ed has done a bunch of mixes from Pentatonics that were done based on these original sessions that were full instrumental sessions, full demos, and now we're kind of translating them into a cappella and seeing how much of it we're going to use and how far we're going to go. And it's kind of an interesting conversation with the group wanting to kind of maintain certain aspects of their style and what their audiences know them as versus trying to make something that's super hard-hitting, radio-friendly pop original music. So it'll be interesting to see where we land.
I love it.
Yeah. Cool. Let's ask another question. Oh, here's a good one. Magnus asks, what are some important factors to take note of when working with one person a cappella? Like a Peter Hollins or, whoever layers himself, like, do you run into any issues with that sonically, mix-wise?
Sure. You're sort of trading one set of problems for an opposite set of problems. You're going from, how do we get these three voices in the soprano section who don't use the same tone at all to sound like a cohesive unit to, well, now I have 50 tracks and every single track has an annoying frequency at 3K. So it's like it's not just blending, it's sounding so homogenous that everything that is bad about it is compiled and compiled and compiled and compiled. Mm-hmm. So how do you
how do you notch those?
Yeah, you're going the opposite direction almost in terms of
and taking out that annoying frequency without compromising the overall sound of it.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, cool. Let's talk about Pitch Perfect. So Michael asks about Right Round and that the sheet music that was published is different from the movie. How much of what was changed? How much of stuff was changed by the movie people? He says.
So, I think Ben, you did most of that one, if I recall.
Yeah, I mean, I actually looked up when I saw this question. I looked it up, and it's pretty similar. I looked at the published version, and it's like almost identical to the one that I have that we used for the movie. So. Maybe that's some other stuff, but I think generally speaking, this is a good general question. Is like the process because you and Deke were doing most of the arranging for both those movies. So like, what was that process like as far as the arranging goes and feedback and what kinds of things were you thinking about also doing the arrangements for the plot?
Sure. So the first part of the question, anytime you see an arrangement that says like from the movie, blah, 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 or whatever, from the TV show, blah, 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 it's an entirely separate arrangement. It might be similar, but it's a different arrangement by a different person. A bunch of the ones I did for Glee were released official arrangements, and I've never even seen half of them. It's just a publishing company needed to make a version of it to sell from the show or the movie. They got their person, and here's what it is.
And they transcribed it.
Yeah, with whatever
they transcribed it or whoever.
Yeah, it just so happens that Deke worked on the movies and was also Hal Leonard's person. So when they went to make their versions of the movie stuff, they're like, well, he's here, so he'll just do them.
Yeah, and we actually we simplified them, but we used the original stuff, a lot of it.
Yeah, he's working off the ones that were there and simplifying them. And he was nice enough to us because legally he had no obligation to credit us on the arrangements at all, because technically those are new arrangements that he did for publishing.
Right.
But he was cool and he offered to put our names on it. And
so all our names were on all of them, even the ones that like I didn't arrange some of them. My name is still on some of them.
Yeah.
Just to keep it even across the board. Very nice.
Especially because the actual process was the three of us while arranging things. Alana DeFonseca was arranging things. People from that music house who we'd never met before were arranging things and sending them in. The crazy thing about a movie is that there are literally thousands of people working on it at the same time, most of whom have never met each other and are in different cities around the world, and nobody knows what's happening.
Did a
And
lot.
especially with that movie. So that movie was made by a small company called Gold Circle. Gold Circle's claim to fame, I can't speak. Their claim to fame was My Big Fat Greek Wedding, which that was like what, 1999, 2000, something like that. Super, super low budget movie. It's just three people talking the whole time, but it blew up. It was huge. So that sort of started them. And then their whole thing was like super, super low budget movies that they try to sell to big studios. So Pitch Perfect 1 was a Gold Circle production that Universal kind of had dibs on. So your bosses were these Gold Circle people, but then you also had Universal, who you didn't really technically work for, but they were kind of holding the purse strings for everything. But you also had a director who you're on the ground with, trying to make decisions with. You have music supervisors. You have like 50 bosses, right? And you're trying to make everyone happy and trying to make music at the same time. And we had some great musicians. And then we had people who had like never done organized music in any capacity ever in their lives.
You mean the cast? The
cast, yeah. We got a bunch of Kelly. We sort of snuck in Kelly as a like, just give us just one ringer who can sing anything. And you're also considering like, well, what's going on with the characters. One thing that was really weird with that movie is for almost the full duration of the movie, they're supposed to not be very good. So you're trying to impress the bosses by doing something that's like supposed to be kind of a letdown performance on screen, but you want the girls to be singing well. And there are all these crazy things to think about. And you also have people from Universal Music who don't care about the plot of the movie. They just want amazing things to put on a soundtrack. And you're like, well, here's the Bellas train wrecking 16 bars into, the song they sing halfway through. So it was, when you're watching a movie, most people watch a movie and they don't think about the music. Most people, some people watch a movie and they think about the music on the level of, oh, here's how the music's functioning in the movie. But you don't think about somebody was trying to make the music function in a movie and also dealing with just like hundreds of people who were all freaking out about money and who had screen time and the plots changing and the scripts changing. And so that was the fascinating thing about doing this stuff for the movie. When it came time to actually to do music, it was pretty straightforward.
Maybe like doing the music just felt like a nice reprieve from all of the other drama.
Yeah, it was. The first movie, like I said, was super low budget. We were filming, our studio was in an abandoned state building in Baton Rouge.
So creepy.
It had broken windows. It didn't have working plumbing. Our studio was adjacent to the dance studio, so they had like thumping bass all day. We had like industrial air conditioning units. And not only that, but they were working under really, really strict union rules for SAG. So we would get singers in a whole week. We would get a singer for 40 minutes. So all these things you don't think about for making music were dominating all our decisions. So coming back from that to just like, oh, we're making an album for our group is so easy peasy and like, oh, like, yeah, fine, send it over. Like, let's do it.
A walk in the park at that point.
Yeah.
So cool. Such amazing insight, Ed.
Cool. Should we do final?
Let's do final thoughts.
We're pretty much out of time. Yeah. So any like last, keys to success or
nuggets
final
of
advice,
inspiration.
Final inspiration.
Whatever you want to leave people with.
My final thought would be, I've always thought that how-tos were bogus. A how-to is a good way to go from having no knowledge on how to do something to having a small amount of knowing how to do something, right? Like I've never installed a sink in my house. If I need to install a sink, I'm going to go to YouTube and watch a how-to and figure out how to do it to the point where I'm not destroying my bathroom, right? But I'm not going to become a master plumber by watching YouTube videos or doing how-tos. So everything you hear in a scenario like this is super valuable, but at some point it needs to be you doing your thing, all the rules be damned, and I know that this is this thing I have to get out of me and do even if it's wrong. So my advice would be, know the rules, but break the rules, but also follow the way the voice in your head is telling you to do things.
Wow.
I love that.
Beautiful.
100%.
Thank you, Ed. This is really fun.
Thanks, Ed.
It was nice
Thanks,
to meet
guys.
you and not only seeing your name on my cell phone screen.
Right.
That being said, I'm going to send you like 15 emails after this, like right after this.
Okay.
Yeah.
And to everyone, so Design Challenge is next week. So Wheels on the
Wheels
Bus.
on the bus.
Can't wait to see them all. And then we're going to be announcing our guests soon.
Yes, we will announce our guests for next week. Super excited.
And the Varsity Vocals Collective
Varsity Vocals
thing.
Design Challenge. We love Ed. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you all. Have a great weekend. And
Thanks,
until
guys.
next time.
Till next time, signing off. We
Bye-bye.
need like a cute thing.
Yeah.
Like a. We'll figure it out.
We'll
for
figure it
next
out.
week.
Okay, bye, guys.
Bye.